Al and Carol have an anniversary this week. How many years, Carol?
49.
Wow.
49. Congratulations. That's great. Yes.
Do you know the password to the Wi-Fi?
No. Anybody know the password to our Wi-Fi at the church? Okay, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
And if you look at your newsletter, there's a big mistake. One person has found it. Has anybody else found the mistake? If I had stickers, you'd get one, Timothy, because you found it.
Just pay me back for one next week.
Okay. Anybody else see it? Okay.
I saw it.
You did? No, I showed it.
No, I she's mad.
I showed it to you. Timothy, tell us the mistake that I made.
Who needs your password?
A password, Kathy does.
Kathy.
Okay, Kathy? Oh, she has it. Liz has it. Okay.
Okay, so
Hi, Lavonda. Well, okay, Tim, what's the mistake I made?
our current lesson unit says, why did Hagar hate the Jews with such vehemence instead of Hagar? It was supposed to be Haman.
That's right. She's supposed to be Haman.
You got the AJ right.
Yeah, I did pretty well. So we're going to look at that today, and we're studying two men. We've already studied two women and then two half-brothers. And Esther 3:1 says it's about Haman the Agagite, or Agagite. And the writer of Esther, who most people think, by the way, does anybody know who the author of Esther probably is? Yeah, tell us, Steph. Mordecai. That's what scholars assume. And it's in the last chapter, it kind of alludes to that. And so we know that Haman was a descendant of Agag. And so then our question should be what? If he was a descendant of Agag, what would be our question to ourselves, being Bible scholars? Who was Agag? And so we're going to be finding out who Agag was, and he was a king of the Amalekites. So then the next question is, why is that important? That he was king of the Amalekites, Agag. We're going to find that the Amalekites were a group of people who were descendants of Ishmael and also of Esau. And today we're studying Esau. There was always enmity between the Amalekites and the Israelites. And Agag was an Amalekite. Got that straight now? And I'm going to show you in the scriptures how that happened. Hi, Jane. And what this mean? Hi. Okay. Hi, Jane. We're so glad you're here today. We miss seeing you. All right, let's see. We have studied two women because this enmity between the Amalekites and the Israelites began way back at the time of Abraham. And at the time of Abraham, there were two women who were very envious and jealous of each other, and we studied them. Who were those two women?
Hagar and Sarah.
Hagar and Sarah, or Sarai at the time. Thank you. And they were really pretty much the ones who planted that seed of enmity and bitterness and hate between their descendants. And then we studied two half-brothers. Who were the two half-brothers? Ishmael and Isaac. Ishmael and Isaac. Did I make a mistake on my paper? This is on page 110, the very, very top. The rivalry between the Arabs and the Jews was planted by two women, Hagar and Sarah. And then the rivalry blossomed into the hostility of Ishmael toward Isaac. That's right, toward Isaac, the sons of Sarah and Hagar. And today we're looking at the children of those people, and we're looking at two brothers, twin brothers, Esau and Jacob. They were fraternal twins. That means they were not identical. Identical twins are called maternal. Is that right? Yep. And identical twins who are not identical are called fraternal. And these were fraternal twins. And this is when the seed that Hagar and Sarah planted has actually blossomed now into hatred because of what the one brother did to the other. And so look at your family tree, if you will, on page 109. And if you don't have that, there will be some in the back. Is that right, Cindy? Is page 109 in the back? If you need it, raise your hand and Cindy will get it for you. Do you need one, Jane? There we go. Anybody else? All right. Look at that because this is not very clear. But we have Abraham and then Hagar and Sarah were the two women. Hagar's son was Ishmael, who was the father of the Arabs. Sarah was the mother of Isaac, and he was the father of the Israelites. It's very interesting how this works. So keep your mind clear on how these people descend from one another, because it's really going to help you understand the Bible. Today we're going to learn why all of those people were called Israelites, why the Jews were called Israelites. So we're going to be looking today at the twin brothers, Jacob and Esau. All of you know Jacob and Esau. And if you don't, I love it because I get to teach it to you today. But Jacob and Esau are very, very, very important to the understanding of the scriptures of the Old Testament and very important to understanding the New Testament. So they were fraternal twins of Isaac and his wife Rebekah. Now, if you want to read a love story, you read about Isaac and Rebekah. It was love at first sight. And I love reading that story of Isaac and Rebekah. They were Esau and Jacob were grandsons of Abraham and Sarah. And the murderous hatred we witnessed in Haman began with these two brothers, Jacob and Esau. So let's look at page 110. The seed of rivalry between the Arabs and the Jews was planted by whom? Sarai and Hagar. And Vicki, congratulations on being married a whole year to Timothy. It's great. I love being married, don't you? It's great. This rivalry blossomed into the hostility of Ishmael toward whom? Isaac, that's right. And the hostility then grew into the fruit of hatred between two brothers, Esau and Jacob. Roman numeral 2 or 1 or whatever that is. Jacob and Esau were fraternal twin what? Sons of Isaac and Rebekah, and grandsons of whom? Abraham. Now let's look at Genesis 25:21 through 28. And I'm just going to read this to you. I hope you don't mind if I read you this story. It's a wonderful story and very well written. And so let's just look at Genesis 25 and verse 21. And I'm just going to read you that story, okay? This is the account of the family line of Abraham's son, Isaac. The Bible is very clear that we are following the family line of Abraham and Isaac, not Abraham and Ishmael. Because the Bible is God's plan for the salvation of mankind. And salvation comes from Abraham through his son Isaac. So that's why we're following the line of Isaac. And anytime we read about Ishmael or his descendants, it's when that person crosses the line of Isaac's descendants. So we just read it because they were important in that respect. Abraham became the father of Isaac through whom? Who was the mother? Sarah. That's right. Isaac's mother was Sarah. And Isaac was 40 years old when he married Rebekah. And that's when I say it's the most beautiful love story. And it was love at first sight for both of them. Wasn't ours that way too, honey?
Yep.
Okay.
For me it was, I don't know about
Okay. Isaac prayed to the Lord on behalf of his wife because she was childless. This is the second woman we read about in the Bible who was barren. Who was the first woman that we've read about who was barren? Sarah.
I was also going to say Ruth.
No, Ruth wasn't. No.
Ruth was for a long time because she was not Ruth, but I mean
Not Ruth?
not Ruth.
Good.
Not Ruth, but it was who was Samuel's mother?
Hannah.
Yeah.
In fact,
that's what I was thinking.
good, Timothy.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Story, but
There are 7 women in the Bible who we were told were barren. And Sarah was the first, then Rebecca, and then, I don't know who the rest were, but there were 7. I can read it to you right now because I had to go do some research on this. What chapter is that? Genesis what?
25.
Okay, Genesis 25. Barren women, Sarah, Rebecca, and then Rachel, who was the wife of Jacob. Manoah's wife, that was Samson's mother, and her name is not given to us, but she was barren until she had Samson. Hannah, the mother of Samuel. A woman named Michal, Michal. Does anybody know who she was? A wife of David. And she never had she was considered barren. And then finally in the New Testament, who was the barren woman in the New Testament? The first woman we read about. Elizabeth, that's right. Thank you. So anyway, that's just kind of interesting to find all that. So his wife was childless, Isaac's wife was. And the Lord answered his prayer, and his wife Rebecca became pregnant. And they had been married, if you kind of work it out, after 20 years of marriage, she became pregnant. The babies jostled each other within her. What does that mean? Wrestled. And she says, why is this happening to me? I guess having twins. Who all have had twins in here? Brenda Hathaway's had twins. Did the babies jostle?
I don't know, it just felt like one big eruption.
Oh, I can imagine. No, I can't imagine. And she says, Rebecca says, why is this happening to me? And this is what the Lord said to her. 2 nations are in your womb. So this is a prophecy now that God gives her when she's pregnant with her babies. 2 babies, 2 nations. And 2 peoples from within you will be separated. One people will be stronger than the other, and the older will serve the younger. Now this is a prophecy that God gave them. So they knew at the beginning that the younger twin would be the stronger and would be the one in authority over the older. And that is not the way it worked in their culture. And this was their prophecy. So let's look at page 110, letter A, and let's read that. Letter A. Murderous hatred began with twin brothers, and their names were?
Esau and Jacob.
Okay. Jacob and Esau, or Esau and Jacob. There was jostling between them before birth. 2 what were in Rebecca's tomb? 2 nations. And the what? Older will serve the younger. And we're going to find that this is very important because Rebecca did her best to try to help God out in this time. And so we're going to read about that. The jostling continued at birth and into adulthood. Let's look at verse 24. When the time came for her to give birth, there were twin boys in her womb. The first one to come out was red, and his whole body was like a hairy garment. He was so hairy that it looked like he had overalls on. He was so covered with hair. So he was a red baby with hair. I don't think he is very cute, probably, do you? And here's Esau, if you can see the picture. They named him Esau. And the name Esau means what? Red. It means red. That's right. And the nation that he founded was Edom. And Edom also means red. All right, so here was this baby, covered with hair, all red, and they named him Red. That's a great name, isn't it? Okay. After this, his brother came out with his hand grasping Esau's heel. So he was holding on to his brother as he was born, and that was very unnatural as well. And here his name is Jacob, which means he deceives. Isaac was 60 years old when Rebekah gave birth to her babies. And here they are, Isaac and Rebekah with their babies. So let's fill in, okay, let's keep reading. We're on verse 27. The boys grew up, and Esau became a skillful hunter. He was a man of the open country, while Jacob was quiet and content to stay at home among the tents. Who would be the easier boy to raise, girls? Jacob would have been easier, wouldn't he? Unless you just think, yes, Timothy?
I just have a couple of questions.
Okay.
Do we know how young Rebecca was? Obviously, he was
We don't know how old Rebekah
I wonder
was.
how young she was whenever she gave birth to the kids.
Yeah, I don't know. But he was 40 when they got married.
And he was 60 when they
Yes. And when he met her, she was still a very young woman because she was working for her father. But that's all we really know about.
I mean, I'm just saying, does anybody happen to...
No, sir.
Could have been as young as 16.
Could have been. Yeah.
Yeah, that's weird, 16, him being so old.
All right, so Isaac had a taste for wild game. This is a sad, sad statement here. Isaac loved Esau, but Rebekah loved Jacob. What were they doing in this event, in this account? Favoritism. That's a dysfunctional family right there, isn't it? And it's very hurtful. And so you can already see perhaps the competition between these two boys. I mean, it was normal anyway. But when you see that they had to vie for the love of their father, and then, or for the love of their mother, if you were the other twin, it was a lot of competition. And so that was a sad part. Let's look at letter A, number 2. 24 through 28. The jostling of the babies continued at birth and after. The first twin was what? Red, and covered with hair, as if it were a garment. And his name was Esau. Esau means red. And he is going to be the founder of the nation, if you want to already write it down, Edom. And I'll show you where that is in a moment. But Esau was the founder of Edom. Edom is a very desert place, right at the southern tip of the Dead Sea. And when you go into that area, you will see red rock. And that's what Edom means, red. So Esau founded a nation that was called Red, or Edom. And so letter B. The second twin was holding what? The heel of the first twin as he came out of, he was being born. His name was what? Jacob, meaning he deceives. And we're going to find that Jacob lived up to his name. Esau preferred outdoors and became a hunter. Jacob was quiet and stayed at home among the tents. Isaac preferred whom? Esau. And Rebekah preferred Jacob. Esau was the oldest son by virtue of being born first. So we're going to look now at the rights of the oldest child, the oldest son in a family. And since we have twins here, the older son will be the one who was born first by just a few minutes or seconds. And so Esau was the older son by virtue of being born before his brother Jacob. What advantages does the older son have? Well, we're going to see that. There are two advantages that the older son will have just by virtue of being older. He receives the birthright and he receives the blessing of the father. And we're going to see what those mean. Esau was the one who was to have the birthright and the blessing. However, God had already told them that the younger one would be the one to receive the blessing and the birthright. When he said the older will serve the younger. Let's look first of all at the birthright. Does anybody know anything about the birthright in the biblical culture? Carol, what?
A double portion.
A double portion of the inheritance, okay? Anybody else know something? So I figured it out. So there were two boys, and if Esau gets the double portion, or the older one gets the double portion, then you would add one more, so that'd be 3, and Esau would get 2/3, and the brother would get 1/3, a double. Not half and half, but 2/3 and 1/3. How do you think that makes the older son and the younger son feel? All right, let's look at this. First of all, he was to receive, and this is in your notes, he was to receive the family birthright. That means he inherits the leadership of the family. Not because he may have been the smarter one or the stronger one or the one more deserving. It was because he was the older. He became the leader of the family. He was the priest or the religious leader as well of the family. And in the family of Abraham, the older son would be in the line of the Messiah. That's letter B. Letter C. The younger would be expected to work for the older. So Jacob would be expected to work for Esau as they grew up. Finally, the older son would also receive a double portion of the inheritance. Esau would receive not a half, but 2/3 of his father's inheritance in land, animals, gold, everything he had. He would get 2/3, and Jacob would get 1/3 of the inheritance. So, number 1 on letter B. Esau was the older twin by virtue of being born first. And do you need any help on letter A through D? He inherited the leadership of the family, the priesthood of the family, and in the line of the Messiah. His younger brother, Jacob, would be required to work for him. And finally, the older brother was entitled to a double portion. And you find that, I think, in the books of law, and I don't remember where it was. I wrote it down and didn't write it here. Okay, number 2. Not only did he get the birthright, but he also received the patriarchal blessing. And in this family, it was the blessing that Abraham received from God. Where do we find it's called the Abrahamic blessing, or the blessing of Abraham? Where in the Bible do we find that? What? Genesis. It's the chapter after 11, which would be Genesis 12. See how good you are? Genesis 12. And this is when God comes to Abraham and he says, you are blessed among all, he said, you will bless all of the peoples of the world. Anyone who curses you will be what? Cursed. And anyone who blesses you will be blessed. You will be the father of many nations. And then in chapter 15, so you need to write this down because it's important for you to understand and remember where the Abrahamic covenant is. It's in Genesis 12 where God first comes to him and tells him. And then in Genesis 15, he comes to him and he says, your descendants will be as many as the stars in the sky. And he said, how can that be? I don't have a son. And God tells him in Genesis 15 that you will have a son with Sarah. And then later he even tells him you will have a son with Sarah by this time next year. And he was 99 years old. And Sarah was 90. And that's the covenant that God gave him. So then Abraham blessed his son Isaac and said that he was the son of promise. And he said, Isaac, you're going to have a descendants as numerous as the stars in the sky. That your descendants will be a blessing to the whole world. And Isaac didn't see how it worked. In fact, Hebrews, the book of Hebrews, tells us that Abraham and Isaac and Sarah believed God even though they never saw the fulfillment of that promise. But we have, and we are, aren't we? Because we are descendants of Abraham. In fact, in Galatians it says that we are children of promise, just as Isaac was the son of promise. Isn't that beautiful? That's the blessing. And now, in Isaac's family, his older son will have that same blessing. But God said, no, not your older son, the younger. And it's through that line that we will see the Messiah come as well. What a great blessing that was. And so let's see, did we do all of that? Okay, number 2, the older son received the patriarchal blessing as recorded in Genesis 12 and 15. Letter A, he would be made into a great what? Nation. And I will bless you. And I will make your name what? Great. Do you think Abraham and Isaac's name are great? They are. They're still great today, aren't they? And you will be a blessing. I will bless those who bless you. I will curse those who curse you. And all peoples on earth will be blessed through you. That is the Abrahamic covenant. And this is exactly what Abraham told Isaac. And now Isaac is to tell his son the very same. And then it will pass on through the generations. Whoever blesses him would be blessed, and whoever curses him would be what? Cursed. Now, so we will find that there is very, very much great hate between Jacob and Esau. They grow up in a wealthy family. They grow up with a doting father for Esau and a doting mother for Jacob, but they hate each other. And one is very deceptive. Let's read about that. What happened between Esau and Jacob to cause such hate that lasted, by the time it gets down to Haman, 1,500 years. They still hate each other and their descendants. So Jacob lived up to his name, deceiver. Let's look at Genesis 25. We're still reading there. Verses 29 to 34. Jacob tricked Esau into giving him the birthright for a bowl of what? Soup. Wow. Look at all he gave up. In fact, the scriptures say he hated the birthright. He didn't want to be the leader of the family. He didn't want to be the priest of the family. He didn't want to be in the line of the Messiah, or he didn't care. He didn't care. And he was willing to give it up for a bowl of soup. Let's read that. Once, when Jacob was cooking some stew, Esau came in from the open country, famished. And he said to Jacob, "Quick, let me have some of that red stew. I'm famished." Now here the stew was red beans probably. And that is why, according to the scriptures, he was also called what? Edom. Okay? Now let me ask you something. Esau thought he was going to die from hunger, didn't he? Now, if you're in the family of Isaac, you'd never go hungry because Isaac was very, very wealthy. And Esau knew how to hunt. But here he was, famished, and he wanted a bowl of soup. Jacob said, he was thinking here, I'll give you soup, but first you have to sell me your birthright. What do you think Esau should have done or would have done? Or what would you think you would do if someone said, sell me your birthright? Well, I would want to think I would say no. But I know how hungry I get sometimes. Look, I'm about to die, Esau said. What good is the birthright to me if I die from hunger? But Jacob said, swear to me first. So Esau swore an oath to him, selling his birthright to Jacob. So then Jacob gave Esau some bread and some lentil stew. He ate and he drank and then got up and left. So let's look at our notes on letter C. Why the hate between Esau and Jacob? Jacob lived up to his name what? Deceiver. Number 1 in Genesis 29-34. Jacob tricked his brother Esau into giving him what? The birthright for a bowl of porridge or soup. And here's a cute picture of that, not very easily seen. So this is an allusion that you hear today quite often, that he sold his birthright for a bowl of soup. What would that mean today? We don't have really what we call birthrights. What does it mean today if I'm talking about a person and I'm saying, you know, he sold his birthright for a bowl of soup? What do we mean by that?
Inheritance? Inheritance?
No, not really. What do you think, Felix? I'm sorry? His soul. Could be, yes. Sold his soul for something that he thought was worth a lot. But in the end, it wasn't worth anything. Did I see a hand over here? Brenda?
I was just thinking, he just gave it away.
Just gave it away.
Yeah.
Gave something, gave something important away for nothing.
Right.
And that could be in the business place or anywhere else. It means to exchange something, this is what it means today, of great value for a gain that eventually proves to be of little value, but which appears to be attractive at first. For example, think about this one. Yes, sir?
I was just thinking, a lot of times we are tempted to do something that seems like, get high, get drunk, or whatever, I'm tempted to do. And it's short-lived, very short-lived.
The pleasure is short-lived.
What you're giving up is your honor,
Your integrity.
your integrity, of what you know you should be doing for this short-lived
Yeah.
high or whatever.
Good. Good. Stephanie?
Who did you say didn't want the birthright and didn't want to be the leader of the family? Which brother was that?
Esau, the older, the hairy guy.
So he gave it up.
He gave it up for a bowl of soup. When I got married to Lyndon, I remember really making this promise to myself. He gave me his name, and he came from a family that had a very good name. And I always wanted to be careful with that name to not make it less valuable. Timothy, you are a good man. I was hoping somebody would bring that.
I could tell you needed some.
I don't know why. That's because Mike didn't bring me coffee today, Cindy.
Sometimes your throat gets dry and you just need something.
Yeah. So when I ran for the Senate and won, I said to myself, you have to take care of this name. You don't hurt your name by a desire for more power or for any other reason. For any reason, you don't hurt the name that Lyndon gave you. I really, really did that consciously all of the time. take care of your name. And when we adopted our daughter, I told her the same thing. We've given you a name of great value. Take care of it. And you know, that's something that I could have sold, that birthright or that pleasure of having a wonderful name, for something in the Senate that at the moment looked good, but in the end it was no good at all. What about this one? Example, one who decides to trade family time for business success. That's trading in something of value, great value, for something that looks better, but it really isn't. And so we need to very consciously, as we make decisions in our life, are we trading something of great value for something of lesser value, for pleasure for a moment? Or, here's another one. Trade a mature spiritual life for something of less value, but which seems very attractive at first glance. I want to spend time watching television, going out to eat, and doing all those fun things, as opposed to spending time with God. That's trading our birthright for a bowl of soup. And we can think of them all day long as we begin to think about this and put it in our lives. What are we doing here? What are we doing? Is this the value? And that's what Esau did. What does it tell us about the character of these two men? Verse 34 says, and this is really sad, Esau despised his birthright. It meant nothing to him. In fact, when you read the last book in the Bible of the Old Testament, Malachi, it says in there, and I never understood this for a long, long time, God hated Esau, but he loved Jacob, because Esau despised his birthright. And so he was not interested in spiritual things of his family. He didn't care about being in the direct line of the Messiah. He placed no value on spiritual things. And what about Jacob? What does the character here tell us? God had told his mom that the younger son would be the one to have the birthright, but yet now he's trying to help out God. Did he not know that God had promised that the elder shall serve the younger? Jacob was impatient, and he took that which God had promised him, and he took it in a clever and tricky fashion, just like his grandmother Sarah. Sarah was very impatient about God's promise. She decided to help God out. And look what it's cost. It's just still going on, the consequences of that behavior and that decision. He should have waited for God. And now we're going to see the second thing, that this was really what caused the hate, even more so. Because Jacob deceived his father with the help of his mother to receive the patriarchal blessing. Now, to me, this is a very despicable thing that happened, that Jacob and his mother did. Let's read it. He used fraud and deceit to get the family blessing at the behest of his mother. He stole the blessing from his older brother by deceiving his blind and elderly father. And after we read this, you're going to think, how did he ever face his father again? How did Rebekah ever face her husband again? When we read of the deceit in this story. It's Genesis 27. When Isaac was old and his eyes were so weak that he could no longer see, he called for Esau, his older son, and said to him, "My son." Esau answered, "Here I am." Isaac said, "I am now an old man, and I don't know the day of my death." We're going to find that he lived 20 more years, but he thought he was dying. And I don't know the day of my death.
Some wild game for me.
Go get some wild game for me. It looks like I left out part of that verse. Now then, get your equipment, your quiver and your bow, and go out to the open country to hunt. Prepare me the kind of tasty food I like and bring it to me to eat, so that I may give you my blessing before I die. This is that patriarchal blessing that Abraham passed to Isaac. Isaac wants to give it to his older son. Now Rebekah, his wife, Isaac's wife, was listening as Isaac spoke to his son Esau. This is so awful. When Esau left for the open country to hunt game and bring it back, Rebekah said to her son Jacob. Now this is when you say, uh-oh. Uh-oh. Look, I overheard your father say to your brother Esau, bring me some game and prepare me some tasty food to eat, so that I may give you my blessing in the presence of the Lord before I die. Rebekah says to Jacob, now my son, listen carefully and do what I tell you to do. Moms, we have a lot of power here. So go out to the flock and bring me 2 choice young goats so I can prepare some tasty food for your father, just the way he likes it. Then take it to your father to eat, so that he may give you his blessing before he dies. And Jacob said to his mother, Rebekah, but Mom, Esau's a whole lot hairier than I am. I have smooth skin. What if Dad touches me? I would appear to be tricking him. What? I would appear to be tricking him and would bring down a curse on myself rather than a blessing. So his mother said to him, my son, let the curse fall on me. Just do what I say. Go and get the goats for me. So Jacob went, and he got them, and he brought them to his mother, and she prepared some tasty food, just the way his father liked it. Then Rebekah took the best clothes of Esau, her older son, which she had in the house, and she put them on her younger son, Jacob. She covered his hands and the smooth part of his neck with the goat skins. Is this tricky? Is this deceptive? Is this just despicable that you would do this to your son and your husband? Then she handed her son Jacob the tasty food and the bread she had made. Now, according to the scriptures, Esau didn't smell very good either, because he was always out in the country hunting and hauling home dead animals. So he didn't smell very good. He had hairy arms, and his voice was different from Jacob as well. So there are a lot of differences here. The mom really had to think this through, didn't she? So she covered him with the goat skin, and she put on Esau's clothes on her son so he would smell like his brother. And he went to his father and he said, my father. Yes, my son. Isaac answered, who is it? Jacob said to his father, I am Esau, your firstborn. What's that called? A lie. I have done as you told me. Please, Dad, sit up and eat some of my game so that you may give me your blessing. Isaac asked his son, how did you find it so quickly, my son? How did you get this game so quickly? The Lord your God gave me success, he replied. Wow, now we're bringing God into it, blaming God for all of this good things. Then Isaac said to Jacob, come near so I can touch you, my son, to know whether you really are my son Esau or not. So apparently he was suspicious here. Timothy?
Another thing that I noticed is that the Lord your God, not
Yeah,
the Lord.
I noticed that too. He said the Lord your God, not the Lord our God. And he said, I don't really know whether you are my son Esau or not. So Jacob went close to his father Isaac, and he touched him and said, the voice is the voice of Jacob, but the hands are the hands of Esau. He did not recognize him, for his hands were hairy like those of his brother Esau. So he proceeded to bless him. But first he said, "Are you really my son Esau?" "I am," Jacob replied. How many lies has he told so far?
3.
Whew. 3 or 4. Then he said, "My son, bring me some of your game to eat so that I may give you my blessing." Jacob brought it to him, and Isaac ate, and he brought some wine, and he drank. Then his father Isaac said to him, "Come here, my son, and kiss me." So he went to him and kissed him. When Isaac caught the smell of his clothes, he blessed him and said, "Oh, the smell of my son is like the smell of a field that the Lord has blessed." Here's the blessing. "May God give you heaven's dew and earth's richness, an abundance of grain and new wine." Lots of wealth here, isn't there? "May nations serve you, and peoples bow down to you. Be Lord over your brothers, and may the sons of your mother bow down to you." So now he's saying Esau and his children and descendants will bow down to Jacob. "May those who curse you be cursed, and those who bless you be blessed." And that was the blessing. And after Isaac finished blessing him, and Jacob had scarcely left his father's presence, then his brother Esau comes in from hunting. And again, we're going to have to say, uh-oh. He too prepared some tasty food and brought it to his father. And he said to him, "My father, please sit up and eat some of my game, so that you may give me your blessing." You'd be confused, wouldn't you, if you were Isaac now? His father Isaac asked him, "Who are you?" "I'm your son," he said, "your firstborn, Esau." Then Isaac trembled violently, and he said, "Well, who was it then that hunted game and brought it to me? I ate it just before you came, and I blessed him, and indeed he will be blessed." Look at Esau's response. When Esau heard his father's words, he burst out with a loud and bitter cry, and he said to his father, bless me too, my father." But he said, "Your brother came deceitfully and took your blessing." Esau said, "Isn't he rightly named Jacob? This is the second time he has taken advantage of me." What did Jacob's name mean?
Deceiver.
He deceives. He took my birthright, and now he's taken my blessing. Then he said, "Have you reserved any blessing for me?" Isaac answered Esau, "I have made him lord over you, and I have made all his relatives his servants, and I have sustained him with grain and new wine. What can I possibly do for you, my son?" Esau said to his father, "Do you have only one blessing, my father? Do you only have one? Don't you have anything else? Bless me too, my father." Then Esau wept aloud. Don't you know Isaac was weeping? How do you think Jacob was feeling and his mother was feeling? I can't imagine. So his father answered him, here's the blessing he had for Esau. "Your dwelling will be away from the earth's richness." And in fact, his dwelling was in Edom, a very, very barren, rocky, dry area. You will be away from the dew of heaven above. You will live by the sword. And as we read the scriptures and we read about the Edomites, they did live by the sword. "You will serve your brother, but when you grow restless, you will throw his yoke from off your neck." And that's later history as well. Esau, listen to this, held a grudge against Jacob because of the blessing his father had given him. He said to himself, this is in the scriptures, he said to himself, the days of mourning for my father are near. My dad's going to die, and we'll be mourning. And when Dad dies, I will kill my brother Jacob. Well, it was 20 years before his father died. And when Rebekah was told that her elder son Esau had said, when she heard that, she sent for her younger son Jacob and said to him, your brother Esau is planning to avenge himself by killing you. Now then, do what I say. Woo. Flee at once to my brother. Stay with him for a while until your brother's fury subsides. And when your brother is no longer angry with you and forgets what you did to him, I'll send word for you to come back from there. Why should I lose both of you in one day? It was 20 years before Jacob came back. He never saw his mother again. His mother never saw her favorite son again. So let's look at our notes. Letter C, number 2. The second thing that Jacob did was he deceived their father. And what was his name? Isaac, into giving him the patriarchal blessing of the firstborn instead of giving it to his brother, the rightful heir. And what was his name? Esau. Thus, number 3 is very important. Well, I wrote this. I think this is such a sad story. He deceived his father. He reaped the wrath of his brother. He never saw his mother again. And God took care of Jacob. And Jacob went to live with Uncle Laban. And Uncle Laban was the most deceptive, dishonest person he could have lived with. He got what he deserved. God's covenant with Abraham, however, would be fulfilled through the descendants of Isaac's younger son Jacob, and not through his older son Esau. That's number 3. God's covenant with Abraham would be fulfilled not through Esau, but through whom? Jacob. Genesis 27:41. Esau was so angry that he vowed to kill his brother Jacob at the death of their father Isaac. And that is number 4. Let's watch a video.
God's story, Jacob and Esau. So part of God's story is about twin brothers, and it begins like this. Once, there were twins named Jacob and Esau, and they didn't get along. They actually started fighting before they were born. Then during birth, Esau came out first, but Jacob was holding on to his heel. That's not normal, and they even look different. The Bible says Esau's body was covered in so much red hair, it was almost like he had clothes on. Jacob's skin was smooth. Well, they got even more different as they grew up. Esau hunted animals and spent time outside. Their dad, Isaac, was a big meat eater, so Esau was his favorite. Jacob, on the other hand, was a quiet guy who liked to stay indoors. Their mom, Rebekah, liked Jacob the best. The Bible doesn't talk much about Jacob and Esau as kids, but we do know Esau was lucky to be the oldest because he had what's called a birthright. That meant Esau would be in charge of their family, including all their money, land, and stuff. Jacob would probably have to work for his brother Esau, and their dad Isaac would give Esau a blessing, which means Isaac would ask God to take care of his oldest son Esau in an extra special way. Well, you probably think Esau was pretty excited about this, but he wasn't. In fact, one day he gave it up. He just returned from a hunting trip. Since he was out killing animals all day, he didn't have time to eat. He came home starving. Jacob was making stew, so Esau said, "Quick, give me some of that stew. I'm very hungry." Now, Jacob was a little sneaky, so he didn't just share the stew with his hungry brother, which would have been nice. Instead, he said, "First, sell me your birthright." And guess what? Esau said yes. It's a little like paying $1 million for a bowl of mushy soup. We don't know why Esau did that, but the Bible says he didn't care about the birthright. But later, when Isaac was really old and about to die, he wanted to ask God to take special care of his firstborn Esau. So he told Esau to go hunting and make him some tasty food, maybe for the last time. Now, Esau wanted the birthright, so he left right away to hunt. Meanwhile, Rebekah had heard Isaac and Esau talking, and remember, Jacob was her favorite. She wanted him to get the blessing. So she did something really sneaky. She told Jacob, I will prepare tasty food for your father. You take it to your father to eat. Then he'll give you his blessing before he dies. See, Isaac was blind. She was telling Jacob to pretend he was Esau. But there was a slight problem with her plan. First off, Esau was hairy. So if Isaac touched Jacob's smooth skin, he would know the truth. The Bible says Esau had a certain smell too, which might be a polite way of saying he stunk. I mean, imagine how smelly a guy would be if he was always sweating and getting dead animal blood stuck on his clothes and matted in his hairy skin. And this was before deodorant. So even though Isaac was blind, he might smell Jacob or touch his smooth arm and know the truth. Well, Rebekah was sneaky like Jacob. She told Jacob to put sheepskin on his arms and wear some of Esau's smelly clothes. Now Isaac would never know. And even though Isaac wondered why the voice sounded like Jacob, guess what? The trick worked. Jacob got the blessing. Now Esau would have to work for him. As you might imagine, Esau was furious. In fact, Rebekah had to help Jacob run away so Esau wouldn't kill him. What's really crazy about this story is Jacob messed up big time, but he really did get God's blessing. Esau even forgave him later. We don't know why God let this happen, but the truth is we all mess up sometimes, and God still wants us to be part of his story. And that's the story of Jacob and Esau. So, in case you missed it, here's the quick version. Jacob and Esau were twins. They were different. Jacob tricked Esau. Esau sold his birthright for stew. Later, Esau wanted his blessing. Rebekah helped Jacob trick his dad Isaac. Jacob got Esau's blessing. Esau was furious. Jacob ran away, but God still blessed him. And that's a part of God's story.
And I wanted to tell. Thank you, darling. Chase, thank you for helping me put that video on. We're going to get better at that. Just before we quit, I want you to look at the book of Hosea, and I want to read 2 verses about deception and bitterness. And Hosea is the first minor prophet right after Daniel. And when I read this, I thought, oh my, that is so good. Chapter 10, verse 12. We've seen how the 2 women, the 2 half-brothers, and now the 2 twin brothers, sowed bitterness in their family. Look what it says in verse 12. Sow, S-O-W, plant for yourselves righteousness. And when you plant righteousness, you reap the fruit of unfailing love. Break up your unplowed ground and plant your seeds of righteousness. For it is time to seek the Lord until he comes, and he will shower righteousness on you. But you have planted wickedness, bitterness, enmity, hate. You've planted that. Look what you reap. Evil. You have reaped evil, and you have eaten the fruit of deception. I found that this morning. Isn't that amazing that that is exactly the accounts we've been reading? That they planted the seeds of unrighteousness and they're reaping the fruit of deception. We're going to see that from then on, between the descendants of Jacob and the descendants of Esau, thousands of years of hate. And it's a very, very sad ending to these 2 boys. We will read what happened with them eventually next week. Thank you for letting me be your teacher. Let's pray. Father, thank you for your word. Lord, that you have given us examples of what happens when we sow bitterness and unrighteousness and hatred, and that what we reap from that. But when we sow the seeds of righteousness, you will rain righteousness upon us. What a beautiful picture that is. And as we walk this week, may we remember that we don't want to give our heritage, our birthright, our blessing for a bowl of soup. But we want to evaluate what we do and say, is this worth it? And so, Lord, I just pray that we will think about these things and meditate on this. Thank you for your word, that it's still true today. And you are still our God, the God of Abraham and Isaac and Jacob. Thank you, Lord. And it's in Jesus' name that we pray. Amen. Thank you very much. I'll see you next.